Hello and welcome. This is Tiger Lily beginning our succinct interviews. I love to do podcasts, but I love to listen to podcasts rather, but generally find that we take too many minutes just fiddling around. So we're going to go right into it. I'm so glad that you're here. I am interviewing photographer Jay Duckwitz today. Hi, Jay. I'm so glad you're here.
Hey, Tiger Lily. Good to
I'm
be here.
so glad you decided to spend some time with us and answer some questions about your photography. So, for those who are joining us on the YouTube channel, you will see one of Jay's photographs on screen. If you are listening to this via audio, we're going to put the link to Jay's website so that you can follow along on his website for his photographs. But I encourage you to check out the YouTube channel so you can see all of this in real time. Jay, I would like to
Cool.
start off with the photograph itself and then lead into some questions that are about your take on photography and your views on photography. So let's start with the photograph itself. What, in
Yeah.
your opinion, makes a good photograph?
Uh, this waterfall that we're looking at, when I first saw this up in Georgia, it's called Cherokee Falls. And I just walked up on it, and it was almost like I was walking into a fairy tale. I felt like at that time, in real time, I'm like, this is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. And so whenever I take a photo, I want to recapture and evoke that same feeling I had exactly, when I took the photo. So in this case, when I look at this photo, I see like your eyes are sort of drawn into this scene and the light coming off to one side, framed by these trees and these rocks into a beautiful blue cascade of water. To me, when I saw this photo, I'm like, yes, this is a 10 because when I look at it right now, I feel the same way as when I was there up in this is near Cloudland Canyon, Georgia, which is right on the border of Alabama, the northwest tip of Georgia.
Okay.
But what makes a
Yeah.
good photo, again,
Yeah.
is bringing the same emotion out, is what
Yeah.
I'd say.
And you said this is the Cherokee National Forest?
This is Cherokee Falls, and
Cherokee
it's
Falls.
within broader, it's called Cloudland Canyon. And it's a giant canyon. I mean, I don't know what the depth of it is, but we're talking, hundreds and hundreds, if not more than 1,000 feet
Wow.
sheer canyon walls, all stone. It's gorgeous. But within
It's
there, I hiked down to this.
You said, in answering that question, you said you saw this photograph, right? Like as you walked up and saw this, that your mind
Yes,
immediately went to, it sounds like, do I have this right, of you actually seeing the image of what it would look like once you had actually captured it and were looking at that artifact.
absolutely. Because when you're looking through that viewfinder, you can tell, do I have glares of light? Do I have a big tree right in the middle of the photo? Is there a naked person walking across the screen? So you do a quick evaluation. But when you click it, and when I first saw it, when I first saw the image, I said, yes. I mean, sometimes I digitally process photos and adjust the brightness and the color. For this particular photo, I remember even when I did auto enhance, I think in one of the Windows applications that makes the photo perfect, it didn't change a thing. And I'm like, yes. And I think the one word description for this one would be dreamy. I'm looking
Hmm.
for a dreamy kind of fairy tale, if that makes sense.
I mean,
That,
I could definitely see little sprites, flying through these trees that are in the foreground, and then the beauty. I mean, the thing that I love about this photograph, aside from this overall, right, but some specific things that I love about this photograph is the trees in the foreground, right? You've got the view of the trees is not like an up or down view. It's a straight on view as if you are walking into this little area, right? And it frames it almost like like an alcove, right? Like a little private
yeah,
alcove. So it has this curtaining effect on either side. And the image is darker on those sides. And then looking straight into the center, you see this white and blue spill of water with that light in the very background that's like also like showing through as white light, but then also filtering
Right.
through the different shades of green for the leaves. And so the whole image has this overall effect, but I think a lot of it is driven by these very specific elements that you notice in the moment and
Yes.
captured.
You're
Um,
right. Like it's
done.
composition. I mean, it wasn't accidental exactly that it turned out like this. Like as I had a big telephoto lens, right? Or so I was adjusting my zoom to where I got just the right amount of trees. But thank you for that description. I couldn't have said it better about this photo.
Well, let's take a look at another one then. If you
All
want to
right.
move to your next photograph that you want to address. Oh, see, this one's also beautiful, and I see that you have signed it as well. Um, so tell us a little bit about this photograph, and then as you're telling us about this photograph, I'd like for you to tell us why, of all of the things that you could have chosen to do with your time, why did you choose photography?
Oh my God. Well, first I'll talk about this particular photo because I have to say this could be my favorite personal photo of 2024. I took it about 3 weeks ago. I was driving along, and like so many photos, I see something out of the corner of my eye, and I pulled off. Um, and I walked. I mean, it was quite a walk to get to this pond. And when I got there, I feel like when I'm looking here is for an auto. If you're ever familiar with Audubon's work and all the
Yes.
bird paintings he did, a lot of his stuff is very realistic on the bird itself, but the surrounding stuff can be very abstract. When you look at the reflection here of that bird in that water, that's like, that is beautiful. That is exactly what I want. And then the background where we have those three bushes kind of framing it with the white bush in the center. Um, and sorry, what was and your question was specifically
Why,
about?
oh yeah, so why did you choose photography? And then we'll get down into some more details
Yeah.
about the specific kinds of photography, but just to like why photography in general did you choose that?
Oh, that's easy because it brought together almost every element of life that I needed at the time. So I needed something to take up my time, number one. I needed to create something after I quit my corporate gigs. I needed to get exercise. I needed to get out there. And best of all, I love nature. And it gave me an excuse to travel. So there's like, talk about a holistic benefit of a hobby. I'm getting exercise. My mind's getting chill. My spirit's getting fulfilled because I'm at the peak of Maslow's triangle, actualizing my creative, right? I mean, when I see this photo, I'm like very proud because that bird is in perfect focus, and every other thing in the entire photo is out of focus, and that's exactly what I was going for.
Yeah.
I don't have resolution on your Zoom meeting, but he has like a yellow and a blue, almost like a military on his shoulder there. If you're familiar with a great blue heron
Hmm.
markings, but I mean, this photo is just perfect for me. But photography, like I said, in general, oh my God, it's meant a lot to me. The last 3 years, I had started it as a teenager. I was doing trick photography, double exposures, all that. And I was raised by an artist, so I was trained in composition. So I was visually, um, artistically trained at a very young age, but I never used it. So late in my life, much later, I pulled it off the shelf, and here I am. So, um, but this is one of my favorites for sure.
I can see
Let's
why.
do another
And I can see why you also chose photography. So for those who are listening in, the photograph they were looking at was a pond. I think it was Florida, right? Was that a heron?
one. A blue heron, great
A
blue
blue
heron.
heron, kind of wading into the pond, and the image is mirrored in the water, right? The landscape is mirrored in the water with the ripples, and so it does create this kind of there's an imprecision in the background that really allows the bird to really take very sharp focus. That's awesome. So photography, obviously, and you mentioned the outdoors. So let's go to that next photo. I saw that turtle. That's
You
so
know,
great.
I wanted to talk about this because I'm not afraid, to get the right perspective. Now, when I took this photo, I was belly down in the sand, if you can't tell. Like to get this low, it's a big tortoise chewing on a leaf. But to get that face and that, like he's chewing on a little, like a cigarette, almost like a deal, that's the look I wanted. And I wanted everything else blurred completely in the background. And
Yeah.
this just an excellent photo, because I was willing to drop down and uh, get because the angle, of course, makes a huge difference in photography. The light, the angle, the composition, what's in focus, what's not in focus. That's what I like to play with, especially focus.
And it
Um,
seems like, you definitely have a preference for nature photography, which you have
right.
shared with me before. And I can totally see why. So why do you love this nature photography? You talked about getting outdoors, but you've also talked here about getting that angle, right? And being belly down in the sand. So it sounds like part of that for you is that just experiencing all of the different ways that your senses can be in nature. And that's one of the things you're capturing.
Yeah. Um, I love I love connecting with the wildlife because I was born that way. So I was always one of the nature boys out in the woods. Oh, let's chase the squirrel, whatever the hell it was out there, the deer, right? But that was me. Like I was happy doing that. I was the guy who was happy to go out and fishing in the lake, just being in the lake, even if I didn't catch something.
Are
But
you in the
photography,
lake here in this photograph that you've got?
oh, this one is sometimes I do black and whites when the mood is just right. I mean, black and white photography. Ansel Adams, are you familiar?
Oh, indeed.
Okay. So Ansel Adams, he doesn't this photo is inspired by Audubon, but the black and white version is Ansel Adams. So it's kind of a fusion, so to speak, of photography. Anyway, like this, no, I'm standing off to the side and I have a strong enough telephoto to where I can pull right up on this.
Gotcha.
This is a great egret. It's called a great egret. People call it a snowy egret because it's all white, but it's a great egret. And these things are huge. I mean,
They're very large birds. And I
you
think
know,
the really awesome thing about this black and white composition too is that you've got the bird, the actual bird, and then you've got almost a negative image in the mirror in the water because of the black and white nature of it, right? So the bird, the reflection is more like gray and black tones. So but it creates this sort of doubling effect as well. And then you've got those little leaves coming up from whatever vining thing is growing on the sand right next to it that's got this little entry into that. So it's not perfectly
yes.
symmetrical, if you will, and the bird image is off to the left. So it does create this very interesting sort of almost an abstraction, right? And looking at the geometry of life itself, right? And I think that's one of the cool things about black and white photography too, is that it makes you pay attention to the shades and the angles
Yes.
more than in color photography.
I want to compliment you on your ability to describe my photos because you're doing it better than I possibly could. And I appreciate it coming from an objective source. Um, my favorite place to do photography, if I had to pick one place, there it is, Rocky Mountain National Park, Colorado. Um, I didn't grow up in the mountains, but I've loved the mountains. Even when I never had seen them, I knew I wanted to go there right away. So this particular photo, I was walking across this gigantic field of grass, glacier field, flat, like a giant glacier millions of years ago had sat there and flattened everything. And then surrounded by this ring of snow-capped mountains, but the lower portions were all coming into spring green. So this might have been June. And there were elk and mule deer, not in this photo, but around here in this tree line, there were elk and mule deer prancing around, giant elk, like bigger than a horse. So whether you're looking for like wildlife photography, mountains or lakes, like my favorite photos are mountain lakes reflecting a snow-capped mountain peak. I mean, if I could only choose one photo to look at, that would probably be
It
yeah.
would be that. That's
And that's because I
awesome.
like water too. But anyway, I Rocky Mountain National Park is definitely my
And
favorite place.
you've got that panorama too of like the whole landscape. You've got the trees and the grass and in
Oh,
front of it. So it's very, but it's also a very human scale again, right? Like I can feel like when I look at this photograph, I can feel myself standing where you're standing because of the perspective that you've
yeah.
chosen, of being able to see the grassy field as if you're standing in that grassy field and seeing the woods beyond it. Okay, so I promised a succinct interview, Jay, and I would like to
Yes.
end on a note of drama if we can. So, one of the questions that I'd like to ask you, because I'm sure that you have had a lot of adventures. Hey, look. So, in your adventures in trying to capture wildlife, landscapes, animals, what has been your scariest moment? And are we looking
I
at that scariest moment right now with
even though I've been more scared taking a photo than this black bear photo with a mama and her two cubs, the other cub you can't see off to the side. I believe I came close to death here, and I mean that as I in Cades Cove, Tennessee, Smoky Mountain National Park. I approached these bears down the tree line, and there were other people there looking, but I went past them, and then I took a left into the field where these bears were feeding mama and two cubs again, and I kept going slowly. All of a sudden, I hear on a bullhorn, "Back away from the bear, sir. This is the National Park Ranger. Back away from the bear." And I turn around, and there's a giant ranger, like 6'8", with a big ranger Smokey Bear hat on, way, way up the hill. So I don't want any trouble. He's got a. And so I back away. And as I look at this photo here of the mama bear, I see the hackles on her back up. So I get
so
up to the
she
ranger.
sees you?
I walk. I was kind of on a little edgy that day. I walked straight up to the ranger, smiling as big as I could, and I go, "Oh, thank you, sir." He goes, "How fast can you run?" And I said,
Oh,
15.
oh my.
He goes, I go, "Oh," I'm like 15 miles an hour on a good day. He goes, "That bear runs 35 miles an hour. Do the
Oh,
math." And I go, "Hey, hey, relax. Thank you very much." And so I turned it around. And I'm like, "Could you tell me stories of bear attacks that you've seen, Ranger?" Anyway, it was great because I turned a bad situation and I got a good photo, a couple good photos into meeting this Ranger. And then he was okay with me after that. But he could have been a real jerk to me. And
that could have gone very differently. Yeah.
yeah.
That could have gone
So
very differently on a few different fronts. So I'm very glad that you survived the bears and the park ranger who could have been a jerk,
right.
and brought us this photograph today.
Thank you.
Wow. Okay. So as we are wrapping up, if there are any other photos that you want to scroll through for the folks watching the video, and if you are listening to the audio, um, definitely check out Jay's website. Jay, can you tell us out loud? And then when I post this, I'll include the link to it.
Oh, it's I'm on my photos are on viewbug.com/jduck. So JAY.
Viewbug.com/jduck.
Yeah,
Okay. I'm
that's my
throwing that
photo.
down in my notes as well, and then I'll put out a link on the YouTube channel and the podcast, so that people can check out your photographs. And Jay, I want to thank you so much for spending some time with us today to talk about these photographs and go through them with you. Um, is there any other place where people can follow your work, or just viewbug.com/jduck?
Right now I'm just there, but in the future you never know what could happen. I might be able to leverage it into something else. But for right now, they say the first 10,000 photos you take are your worst. And so I'm trying to get past that 10,000 mark as soon as I can.
Yeah.
But they're
Well,
they're getting better. Thank you, EB.
I mean,
Thanks.
it's very clear that they are. Before we sign off, I just want to draw attention for the audio folks to this final photo. This looks like Florida, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
and taken somewhere in the
Oh,
interior of the mangrove swamps. Is that right? Or an oak swamp?
yeah.
Um,
When I saw this orange liquid all over, I thought it was a blood or something. It was so vivid. What it is, it's like iron oxide and dissolved in the water after a rain somehow. And I just stumbled upon it. And I just bent down and you can see I've got a little bit of grass in the front. So it's got a beautiful uh and with that oak crossing the whole thing. It's hard to take a tree picture and make it look good. I'll be honest with you. Oop, Tiger. That's the biggest challenge, I would say.
I could
Making a
see
tree
that
look
too,
good.
because trees are so much larger than the human scale, right? And so it's difficult to like do justice to it, but I love that this tree is leaned over so it's able to be more in the frame. This has to me a similar feel of it being kind of fairy-ish, right? That this is like a portal to the land of the Fae. But just the Florida version with all that iron oxide in the water. I
Yeah.
think that's an important attribute, I think, of a lot of the waters in Florida is this iron oxide that makes a lot of the lakes and ponds that reddish color. And it does make this really beautiful contrast to all the different shades of green. And then again, you've got this light that's shining in, and you can't like there's no like shaft of sunlight, but it's like this bright ambient glow so that you can just tell that it is absolutely beautiful daytime. But also there's this air of mystery about it too, because the light is so diffused. It kind of looks sort of fairyish, like you're about to enter into another realm. And if you sort of cross that water and keep walking down that pathway, um,
See, that's what makes a good photo is you being able to describe all the elements that are within this photo that make it great, because you see them. And if it wasn't a good photo, you wouldn't be able to say any of that.
yeah,
So,
being able to spark the imagination.
right?
Um,
So thank you so much. It's really fun.
Yeah,
Talking about this.
definitely. Jay, I'm so glad that you were with us today. I'm going to stop the recording from here so that everybody who is listening or watching can get on with the rest of their day. Thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thanks.